Hey everyone, welcome back. If you've ever been the invisible kid in your own family, the one who works hard, plays by the rules, and still gets treated like an afterthought, this story is going to hit you right in the chest. My name is Laura, and what I'm about to tell you is how my parents spent over $100,000 on my younger sister's fairy tale wedding, then handed me a cheap greeting card for mine. Not a check, not an apology, just 2 words: good luck. But here's the thing they didn't know. I had the power to take everything from them, and by the time I was done with my quiet, calculated moves, they were homeless. No roof, no security. Just the cold, hard lesson that favoritism has consequences. Let me take you back to the moment it all shattered. Picture this, a grand ballroom in Connecticut. The kind of place where crystal chandeliers drip like diamonds and the air smells of fresh orchids mixed with champagne. My sister Emily's wedding. The venue alone cost $40,000. I know because I had access to my dad's construction company books. Emily floated through the crowd in her custom Vera Wang gown, all $15,000 of it gleaming under the lights. The 5-tier cake was a work of art. The band played her favorite songs. Guests clinked glasses, toasting the perfect couple. I was there as a bridesmaid, forcing a smile, clutching my bouquet so tight my knuckles turned white. I'd always been the responsible older sister, the one who put herself through college, who turned our family business profitable, while Emily partied her way through life on mom and dad's credit card. But watching them pour a fortune into her dream day, that was a new level of gut punch. Then came the moment that changed everything. Dad pulled me aside during the reception, his face flushed from too much scotch, Mom hovering behind him with that fake sympathetic smile. "Laura," he said, pressing an envelope into my hands, "we know your wedding with Tom is coming up. Wanted to give you something special, too." My heart actually skipped. Tom and I had been scraping together pennies for a modest ceremony. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally going to show up for me. I opened the card right there, surrounded by the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Inside, good luck, love, Mom and Dad. That's it. No check, no offer of help. Just those 2 words, scrawled like an afterthought. Mom patted my arm. "Honey, you're the strong one. You'll figure it out." I stared at that card, and something inside me cracked. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know about Grandpa's will, the one that left me 40% ownership of the family business. They didn't know I'd been documenting their embezzlement for months. They didn't know that their golden child's lifestyle was about to come crashing down, and they'd be buried in the rubble. If you've ever been the forgotten sibling, the one who gave everything and got nothing, stay with me. This revenge is ice cold and absolutely justified. And if you agree that family should mean fairness, hit that subscribe button right now, because you're going to want to see how this ends. To understand why that card cut so deep, you need to see where this all started. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, our family looked perfect from the outside. Big colonial house with a wraparound porch, manicured lawn, pool in the back. Dad's construction business, Thompson Builds, provided well. But inside those walls, the inequity was woven into every day like a pattern I couldn't escape. I was 10 when I first realized I was different from Emily. She was 5, throwing a screaming tantrum because Mom bought her a doll with brown hair instead of blonde. I watched from the kitchen doorway as Mom rushed back to the store to exchange it, cooing apologies. That same week, I'd asked for new sneakers. Mine had holes worn through the soles, and Mom handed me Emily's old ones. "You're so practical, Laura. These are perfectly fine." Practical. That word became my identity. While Emily got frilly dresses and American Girl dolls, I got hand-me-downs and told to be grateful. When she cried, the world stopped. When I cried, I was being dramatic. "Emily's sensitive," Mom would say, like it was a badge of honor. "You're our strong one." Strong meant invisible. But there was one person who saw me. Grandpa Joe, Dad's father, the man who'd built Thompson Builds with his own calloused hands, hammering nails into Connecticut homes since 1962. Saturday mornings, he'd pick me up in his old Ford truck that smelled like sawdust and coffee, and we'd drive to job sites. By age 12, I could read blueprints. He'd spread them across the hood of his truck, his weathered finger tracing load-bearing walls and electrical plans. "Laura, you've got the mind for this," he'd say, his eyes crinkling. "You're a builder, not just of houses, of futures." Emily came to exactly one site. She complained about the dust, the noise, the icky porta potties, never returned. Grandpa shrugged. "Not everyone's built for building," he told me quietly. But I saw something flicker in his eyes, disappointment maybe, or recognition that I was the one who'd carry the legacy. High school crystallized the divide. I studied relentlessly, joined every academic club, tutored other students for extra cash, valedictorian at graduation. I gave a speech about hard work and opportunity while my parents sat in the third row, Dad checking his phone, Mom whispering with other mothers. Emily, 13 then, slouched in her seat, chewing gum. The celebration dinner that night got cut short because Emily had a dance recital the next morning that needed prep time. College was my escape route. I earned a full scholarship to UConn, majored in finance, worked nights waitressing at a diner off campus, came home smelling like grease and syrup, studying between shifts, determined to build something they couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, Emily chose Fairfield University, $60,000 a year, private, prestigious. Dad wrote the checks without flinching. She lasted one semester before flunking out. Too much partying, not enough class attendance. Did they cut her off? Pull the funding? No. They sent her to find herself backpacking through Europe for 6 months. I saw the credit card statements when I came home for Christmas break. $8,000 charged in hostels, restaurants, and shopping in Paris, Barcelona, Rome. Emily posted photos on Facebook, her grinning under the Eiffel Tower, toasting wine in Italian vineyards, buying designer scarves at markets. I was eating ramen in my dorm, picking up extra shifts to afford textbooks. After graduation, I joined Thompson Builds full-time. Dad seemed genuinely thrilled at first. "My right hand," he'd announce at office meetings, clapping my shoulder. I dove in, revamped the entire accounting system, discovered we were hemorrhaging money on inefficient contracts. I negotiated new deals, pushed us into eco-friendly building before it was trendy, secured grants for green construction projects. Within 2 years, annual profits jumped from $500,000 to $1.2 million. Dad promoted me to vice president. I was 25, running operations, managing crews, closing deals with developers who respected my expertise. I'd found my power, finally something they couldn't diminish. Then Emily decided she wanted to help the family business. She showed up one Monday in designer heels and a blazer, having done zero research, possessing zero skills. Dad gave her an office, the title of creative consultant, and a $60,000 annual salary. Her job? Suggesting paint colors for model homes, picking furniture for staged properties. She came in at 10, left by 3, took 2-hour lunch breaks. I said nothing, just worked harder, closed bigger deals, kept the company afloat while she played pretend. But inside, the resentment built like sediment, layer by layer, year after year. I told myself it would balance out eventually, that merit would matter, that my parents would see who really carried this family forward. I was wrong. Favoritism doesn't balance. It compounds. And when Emily got engaged to Mark, a slick real estate broker with capped teeth and a sports car, the favoritism exploded into something I couldn't ignore anymore. That's when the real betrayal began. Emily's engagement was a spectacle. Mark proposed at a rooftop restaurant in Manhattan, the skyline glittering behind them. A photographer conveniently positioned to capture the moment. He'd arranged for a flash mob, dancers, roses falling from the ceiling, the whole performance. Emily's Instagram post got 5,000 likes in an hour. The family dinner announcement 2 days later was worse. Dad opened a $200 bottle of champagne. "Our little girl's all grown up," he bellowed, tears actually streaming down his face. Mom clutched Emily's hand, gushing over the ring. 2 carats, platinum band, probably cost more than my car. They toasted the perfect couple, passed the ring around the table for everyone to admire. I smiled, hugged Emily, said all the right things. Inside, I calculated how many extra shifts I'd work to pay for my own education while they bankrolled her failures. Tom proposed to me 3 months later. We'd been together since college. He taught middle school history, coached soccer, was kind in the bone-deep way that doesn't need announcing. He proposed during a picnic at Lighthouse Point Park, just us and the sunset. Simple, honest. The ring was modest. He'd saved for months. When he knelt in the grass and asked me to marry him, I cried happy tears. I called home that night, bursting with news. "That's nice, dear," Mom said, distracted. I could hear Emily in the background talking about wedding venues. "Tom seems very steady." Steady. Code for boring. "We're excited to start planning," I pushed forward. "I was hoping we could—" "Laura, honey, can I call you back? Emily's showing me centerpiece options. This is important." Click. Dad's response when I told him in person. "Good for you, kiddo. Tom's a solid guy." Then immediately, "Speaking of planning, Emily's wedding is going to need some serious coordination. Your mother's already found a venue, but it's pricey." Pricey didn't begin to cover it. The next 6 months became the Emily Wedding Show. Mom created Pinterest boards with thousands of pins, floral arrangements, table settings, dress styles. She took Emily on dress shopping trips every weekend, sometimes flying to New York or Boston to visit high-end boutiques. Dad signed checks without reading them, waving his hand, "Whatever she wants." It's her day. I was still VP at Thompson Builds. I had access to the company accounts, and what I saw made my stomach turn. The venue rental, $40,000 for the waterfront estate, including grounds and ballroom. The dress, $15,000 for a custom Vera Wang, plus another $3,000 in alterations. Catering, $30,000 for a 6-course meal with open bar for 200 guests. Flowers, $10,000 for elaborate centerpieces and installations. The band, $5,000 for a 6-piece ensemble. Photographer and videographer, $10,000 for the platinum package. Then the extras. Custom invitations, Emily's bridal party gifts, spa day for 10 bridesmaids, her bachelorette trip to Bali. I did the math, $120,000. Possibly more when the final invoices came through. They'd taken a second mortgage on the family home to cover costs. The house, the one Grandpa helped Dad buy 40 years ago, the one where I'd grown up, the one that represented generations of hard work, leveraged for Emily's party. When I mentioned my own wedding planning, the response was a masterclass in dismissal. "Mom, Tom, and I are looking at venues. Nothing fancy, but we need to book soon." "How much are you thinking?" Mom interrupted. "Well, we hope for some family contribution, maybe—" "Laura, we're completely stretched thin after Emily's. You understand, right? You've always been so good at budgeting." Dad's version was blunter. "You're the smart one. Budget it out. Make a spreadsheet." He chuckled like it was a joke. "Besides, Tom's family can chip in." Tom's family. His parents were blue-collar, wonderful people who'd raised 3 kids on a contractor's salary. They could barely afford the rehearsal dinner they'd generously offered to host. The card arrived 2 weeks before my wedding. I grabbed the mail on my way into the house, saw the envelope addressed in Mom's looping handwriting. For a moment, stupid, desperate moment, I thought maybe they'd tucked a check inside. A late surprise. An acknowledgement. I opened it standing in our small kitchen. Tom was at work. The card was generic, bought from a drugstore rack. "Congratulations," in gold script on the front. Inside, Mom's handwriting. "Good luck. Love, Mom and Dad." No check, no note, just those 2 words. Good luck. I stood there for 5 minutes staring at it. Then I walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower to mask the sound, and cried so hard I thought I might crack apart. The water ran cold before I could pull myself together. I hid the card in my nightstand drawer beneath old receipts and spare keys. Never told Tom, never told anyone. Our wedding was beautiful in its own way. Backyard ceremony at a friend's house, string lights hung between trees, wildflowers in mason jars, friends helped set up. Tom's mom baked a simple but delicious cake. We danced on grass under stars. People told me it was lovely, intimate, real. But at the reception, Emily cornered me by the drinks table. "It's cute, sis," she said, glancing around with barely concealed condescension. "Very homey. Mine had that wow factor, but this suits you." That night, lying next to Tom in our small apartment, I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me. The wound wasn't just open, it was infected, and it needed to be lanced. 3 weeks after our wedding, I went back to work, threw myself into Thompson Builds with renewed focus. Tom asked if I was okay. I was working late, bringing files home, my jaw tight with tension I couldn't explain. "Just busy season," I lied. Truth was, I was auditing. Every account, every transaction, every expense report filed over the past 5 years. What I found made my blood run cold. The $50,000 borrowed for Emily's house down payment, processed as a business loan to a consultant, never repaid. The $8,000 for her Europe trip, charged to a company credit card as research expenses. Her $60,000 annual salary for picking paint swatches, legitimate payroll, but egregious for zero actual contribution. The wedding expenses, some routed through company accounts disguised as event marketing or client entertainment. I documented everything, built spreadsheets, cross-referenced receipts with bank statements, total siphoned over 5 years, somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. Money that should have stayed in the business, gone to employees' bonuses, been reinvested in growth. Instead, it funded Emily's lifestyle. I confronted Dad in his office on a Tuesday afternoon, shut the door, dropped the printouts on his desk. "We need to talk about these transactions." He barely glanced at them. "What about them?" "This $50,000 for Emily's house. It's marked as a loan, but there's no repayment schedule, no interest, no—" "Family helps family, Laura." His voice was hard. "That's how we operate." "This isn't help, Dad. This is embezzlement." His face went red. "Watch your mouth. I built this company. I can spend my money how I want." "It's not just your money," I said quietly. "Not anymore." He stood up, leaned across the desk. "What the hell does that mean?" I didn't answer, just walked out, my heart hammering. That night, I did something I should have done years ago. I called Aunt Rita, Dad's older sister. She'd been overlooked too, passed over when Grandpa handed the business to Dad instead of splitting it. She'd moved to Vermont, built her own life as an architect, but she understood family favoritism in her bones. "Rita, I need to ask you something about Grandpa's will." There was a pause. "You found out?" "Found out what?" "About your 40%. The words didn't make sense at first. "What 40%? "Joe left you 40% ownership of Thompson Builds. It's in a trust that matured when you turned 25 and joined the company full-time. Has been for 3 years now. Your father told you it was symbolic, didn't he?" My hands went numb. He said it was honorary, that Grandpa wanted me to feel included, but it didn't mean anything legally. Rita's laugh was bitter. "Of course he did. Laura, that stake gives you full voting rights, veto power on major financial decisions. Your name is on the incorporation documents. Joe did it to protect the business. He knew your father had a soft spot for Emily. He wanted someone with a clear head to have control." I couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I thought you knew. I thought you'd exercised that power already. What made you call now?" I told her everything. The wedding disparity, the embezzlement, the card. "Good luck," she repeated, her voice sharp with anger. "They gave you good luck." "Rita, there's more. The house, the family home, is tied up in this somehow. Isn't it?" Joe used it as collateral for expansion loans years ago. It's technically a business asset. And if you've been paying property taxes through those deferred bonuses your father keeps promising, you've been covering the company's obligation. My entire world tilted. I owned 40% of Thompson Builds. The house was collateral. Emily's entire funded lifestyle was built on money I had the power to control. They didn't know. None of them knew. "What are you going to do?" Rita asked. I stared at the card on my nightstand, those 2 words mocking me. "I don't know yet." "Joe always said you were the smart one, the builder, not of houses, of futures. Build yours, Laura. Don't let them tear it down." The next morning, I called Mr. Harlan, the corporate attorney I'd worked with on business contracts. Sharp, methodical, expensive. "I need you to review some documents, and I need your complete discretion." He reviewed Grandpa's will, the incorporation papers, every transaction I'd flagged. 3 days later, he sat across from me in his office, fingers steepled. "You have substantial legal power here. Your grandfather was very deliberate. This isn't symbolic. This is binding. You can block major expenditures. You can force audits. You can even trigger a buyout clause if you can prove malfeasance." "What about the house?" "Complicated but leverageable. It's company collateral and you're part owner. If the company defaults on debts, the house is at risk. And given these transactions..." He tapped my spreadsheets. "There's a case for financial mismanagement." Tom found me that night sitting in the dark staring at nothing. "Laura, talk to me." "What's going on?" I told him everything. He listened, his teacher's patience letting me spill it all out. The years of favoritism, the card, the discovery of my hidden ownership. "What do you want to do?" he asked finally. "I want them to understand," I said slowly. "I want them to feel what it's like to be overlooked, dismissed, told to just figure it out." "Revenge?" "Justice," I corrected. "Legal, patient, surgical." I looked at him. "But it's going to get ugly. If you want me to let this go..." He took my hand. "I married you because you're strong. Really strong, not their version. You do what you need to do. I'm with you." That was the decision point. The moment I chose the sage path, no screaming, no scenes, no breaking laws, just quiet, calculated moves that would let their own greed bury them. 3 months passed. I showed up at family dinners with smiles and casserole dishes, laughed at Dad's jokes, admired photos of Emily's new furniture, played the role of dutiful daughter and sister. But behind the scenes, I was building something they couldn't see. If they only knew what was coming. If they only knew the forgotten sister was now the one holding all the cards. The first 3 months after discovering my 40% stake, I became a ghost in my own life. I smiled at the right times, nodded during family dinners, asked Emily about her new house with its freshly installed pool. But every evening, after Tom fell asleep, I'd pull out my laptop and work. The office at Thompson Builds had filing cabinets dating back 15 years. I stayed late telling Dad I was catching up on quarterly reports. He'd clap my shoulder, relieved someone was handling the tedious work. If he only knew I was photographing every receipt, every invoice, every bank statement that showed money flowing from company accounts into Emily's lifestyle. The paper trail was damning. I built spreadsheets with forensic precision: date, amount, claimed purpose, actual purpose. The $50,000 house down payment logged as consultant advance. Emily's Europe trip charged as market research for Mediterranean design trends. Her car lease payments coded as company vehicle for client meetings. She didn't have clients. She had nail appointments and brunch reservations. Wednesday evenings became my ritual with Aunt Rita. We'd meet at a coffee shop halfway between Greenwich and her place in Vermont, tucked in a corner booth where no one knew us. She'd order black coffee. I'd get chamomile tea. My stomach couldn't handle anything stronger. "You're doing this the right way," Rita said during our second meeting, reviewing my documentation. Her architect's eye caught details I'd missed. Joe would be proud. He always said revenge is a dish best served with proper documentation. Is it revenge if it's just exposing the truth? She smiled, sad and knowing. Honey, when the truth destroys someone, they'll call it revenge regardless. But you're protecting the business Joe built. That's justice. Mr. Harlan's office became my second home. His rates were $400 an hour, but he was worth every penny. Former prosecutor turned corporate attorney. He knew how to build cases that couldn't be dismantled. We met every Friday at 7 a.m. before the office opened. "Your grandfather's will is airtight," he confirmed in our third meeting, sliding the official documents across his mahogany desk. Full voting rights on major expenditures over $10,000, veto power on loans, acquisitions, or asset transfers. And this clause here. He tapped a paragraph. If you can prove financial mismanagement, you can force a full audit or trigger a buyout. What constitutes mismanagement? Misuse of funds, failure to maintain fiduciary duty, nepotism without business justification. He looked at my spreadsheets. You've got all three. The first move came in early November. Emily texted Dad asking for $20,000 to remodel her kitchen. She wanted marble countertops, custom cabinets, the works. I saw the email request come through company accounts marked as another family loan. I was in my office when I blocked it. One click in the financial system, flagging it for board approval. We didn't have a formal board, it was just Dad making decisions. But according to Grandpa's will, I was effectively the second board member. Major expenditures needed my signature. Dad's call came 10 minutes later. "Laura, what the hell is going on? The system rejected Emily's transfer." I kept my voice steady, professional. "Company policy, Dad. Any loan over $10,000 needs board approval. It's in the incorporation documents. I can send them over if you'd like to review." Silence. Then, "This is ridiculous. It's family." "Then it should be easy to justify at a board meeting. Let's schedule one for next week. We can review all outstanding family loans at the same time. I don't have time for bureaucratic nonsense." Then the transfer stays blocked. I smiled at my computer screen, even though he couldn't see it. Company policy. He hung up without saying goodbye. Emily's text came that afternoon. "Why are you being difficult? It's just a kitchen. It's family." I replied with a smiley face emoji. Nothing else. Let her wonder. That weekend, I met with Bob Martinez, the bank manager who'd handled Thompson Build's accounts for 20 years. We'd worked together on construction loans, and he'd always been impressed by my thoroughness. I invited him to lunch at a steakhouse downtown, somewhere nice enough to signal importance. "Bob, I need your professional opinion on something." I slid a folder across the table, copies of the irregular transactions, carefully anonymized. "If you saw these patterns in a business account, what would concern you?" He studied them while cutting his ribeye. His expression shifted from curious to troubled. Uncategorized transfers, loans without repayment schedules, personal expenses coded as business. If this were flagged in an audit... He looked up. "Laura, is this Thompson Builds?" "Hypothetically." "Hypothetically, I'd recommend flagging this for review. Potential fraud. The bank has obligations to report suspicious activity." He set down his fork. "You're protecting the business, aren't you?" "I'm protecting what my grandfather built." "Good. He'd want someone watching the store." Bob wiped his mouth. "If certain irregularities were brought to my attention officially, I'd have to freeze credit lines pending investigation. Bank policy." "That's good to know," I said quietly, hypothetically. We shook hands in the parking lot. Bob's grip was firm. "Your grandfather was a good man. He trusted you with this for a reason." Thanksgiving arrived like a test. Mom hosted, as always, turkey with all the trimmings, the house decorated in autumn colors. Emily and Mark showed up in matching designer sweaters, their new pool prominently featured in the Instagram stories Emily kept filming. "It's heated," Emily announced during appetizers, showing photos on her phone. "We can swim until Christmas. Mark wanted a diving board, but I thought that was tacky." Dad beamed. "You two deserve it. Working so hard." I sipped my wine. A Pinot Noir that tasted like copper. Worked hard at what? Emily's last contribution to the business was suggesting beige for a model home bathroom. Mark sold houses for commission. Nothing wrong with that, but they weren't exactly building empires. "The contractor gave us a great deal," Mark added. $20,000 total steel. $20,000. The same amount I'd just blocked. Dad must have given them cash, pulled it from somewhere. His personal account, maybe, or worse. "Laura, you're quiet," Mom observed. "Everything okay?" "Just thinking," I said, setting down my glass. "About expenses, budgets, the usual." "Always working," Emily singed. "You should relax more. Enjoy life." Enjoy life. Like she did, on money siphoned from the company I actually ran. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out my phone. Checked the company credit card statements I'd set to forward to my email. There it was, a $20,000 cash advance taken 2 days ago, coded as emergency equipment repair. There was no equipment emergency. I'd have known. I approved all maintenance. I looked at myself in the mirror, exhausted eyes, tight jaw, the weight of playing pretend pulling at my face, but underneath something harder, steel forged in dismissal and neglect. If they only knew that IRS letter was already drafted, sitting in Mr. Harlan's office waiting for my signature. If they only knew Bob had already flagged the accounts for review. If they only knew their savings, their pool, their marble countertops were built on sand that was already shifting. I returned to the table, smiled, and asked for a second slice of pie. The following Monday, Bob called. "Laura, I need to inform you that we're initiating a review of Thompson Build's credit accounts. Standard procedure when irregularities are flagged. The line of credit will be frozen pending investigation." "How long?" I asked, though I already knew. 4 to 6 weeks minimum. Possibly longer if we find issues requiring deeper analysis. "Thank you for letting me know." I hung up and waited. The call from Dad came 3 hours later. Dad's panic was immediate and visceral. "Laura, the bank froze our credit line. Get down there and fix this. Now." I was at my desk eating a salad for lunch, completely calm. "I'm aware. Bob called me this morning." "And? What did you tell them?" "That we'd cooperate fully with the review. It's standard procedure, Dad. These things happen when account activity raises questions." "Questions?" His voice pitched higher. "What questions? We've banked with them for 20 years. "Exactly. 20 years of history they're now examining." I stabbed a cherry tomato. "I'm sure it's just a formality. We'll provide documentation, they'll clear it up, nothing to worry about." Unless, of course, the documentation showed exactly what I knew it showed. "Fix this," he repeated. "Use your connections." "I'm on it," I lied smoothly. "But these things take time. In the meantime, we should probably tighten discretionary spending, just until the credit line reopens." He hung up without acknowledging me. I finished my salad, then drafted an email to all employees about temporary spending freezes due to routine banking procedures. Made it sound boring, bureaucratic, nothing alarming. But for my parents, who'd grown accustomed to treating company funds as a personal ATM, it was a catastrophe. Mom called that evening, voice worried. "Honey, the mortgage payment bounced. The bank sent a notice. I don't understand. Your father always handles this." "That's strange," I said, injecting concern into my tone. "Have you talked to Dad?" "He says it's a banking error. Something about frozen accounts." "Oh, right. The credit review. That shouldn't affect personal accounts, though." It did, actually. Dad had used company credit as backup for personal overdraft protection. But Mom didn't need to know that. "I'm sure Dad will sort it out." "Can you help? You're so good with these things." The irony tasted sweet. "I'm doing everything I can, Mom, but there are processes, regulations. I can't just wave a wand." She sighed, maternal disappointment radiating through the phone. "I know you're busy. It's just, Emily needs help with some bills, and now this." Emily. Always Emily. "I'm sure it'll resolve soon," I said, and got off the phone before she could ask me for money directly. 2 weeks into the freeze, I received my first message from Mark. It came through LinkedIn, of all places, a private message marked confidential. "Laura, we need to talk. It's about Emily and your parents. Can we meet?" I stared at the message for a full minute. Mark, the real estate broker with the flashy smile and designer suits, wanted to talk? The man who'd married my sister for her family's money was reaching out to me? Curiosity won. I agreed to meet at a Starbucks in Norwalk, neutral territory between our towns. Mark looked diminished in person, the Polish worn off. His suit was still expensive, but there were shadows under his eyes. He ordered a triple espresso. "I'm going to be direct," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with shaking hands. "Emily's pushing for more money, a lot more. She wants $10,000 for landscaping. Then it'll be something else. She doesn't understand the word no, and your parents keep enabling her." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's wrong." He looked up and I saw something unexpected. Shame. I knew what I was getting into when I married her. The princess treatment, the spending, but I thought she'd grow up. She hasn't, and now she's threatening divorce if I don't provide better. I sipped my coffee. "What do you want from me?" "I want out, but I need proof that this isn't me being cheap. That she's genuinely unreasonable. Emails, texts, evidence that shows the pattern. I know she asks your parents for everything. I need—" He swallowed. "I need you to know I see what they did to you. The wedding, the favoritism. It's not right. The rat showing his colors, but a useful rat. Send me what you have," I said. "Emails, texts, documented requests. I can't promise anything, but—" I let it hang. He nodded, relieved. "Thank you. And Laura, I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner." The emails arrived that night. Dozens of them. Emily demanding money for furniture, for clothes, for trips, threatening Mark with her parents' disappointment, with divorce, with her tears. In one message, she wrote, "My parents spent $100K on our wedding. The least you can do is give me a decent life." I forwarded everything to Mr. I. Harlan with a note. Additional evidence of financial expectations and patterns. His response came within an hour. "This is gold. Keep it safe." December brought the formal board meeting I'd been preparing for. I scheduled it for a Tuesday morning, sent official notice to Dad via certified mail, legal requirement for a shareholder meeting. He tried to cancel 3 times. I reminded him that refusing to convene was a breach of corporate governance. He showed up furious, Mom and Emily in tow. Emily wasn't officially an employee anymore. I'd quietly processed her resignation the week before, citing budget cuts. She hadn't noticed the paychecks stopping yet. Mr. Harlan sat beside me, briefcase open, documents stacked in neat piles. The conference room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in on decades of secrets. "What is this about?" Dad demanded. I slid a document across the table. "This is the official shareholder agreement for Thompson Builds. As you can see, I hold 40% ownership, granted by Joseph Thompson in his will. I'm exercising my rights to review major financial decisions made over the past 5 years." Dad's face went pale. That was symbolic, a gesture. Mr. Harlan spoke, his prosecutor's voice cutting clean. "Actually, Mr. Thompson, it's binding. Full voting rights, veto power, fiduciary oversight. Laura has every legal right to this review." "This is betrayal," Dad hissed. Emily leaned forward, her face twisted with contempt. "You're just jealous. You can't stand that I had a beautiful wedding and you had a backyard party." The words hung there, jealous, as if this was about envy and not embezzlement. I opened my first folder. Let's discuss major financial decisions, starting with this $50,000 transfer for a house down payment, coded as a consultant advance. "Emily, when did you consult for the company?" I did marketing suggestions. "Name 3 projects you consulted on, with dates." Silence. I opened the second folder. This $8,000 for a Europe trip marked market research. What markets did you research? What findings did you report? Emily's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. Third folder. This $120,000 for wedding expenses, split across 12 different budget codes. Entertainment, marketing, client development. Dad, how many clients attended Emily's wedding? "This is my company," Dad said, but his voice cracked. "I built this. I can spend my money. Not entirely your company," I interrupted. "And not your money when it comes from corporate accounts. This is embezzlement. misuse of business funds for personal expenses, failure to maintain fiduciary duty to shareholders, namely me. I stacked the folders in front of them. I'm implementing immediate changes. All discretionary spending over $5,000 requires dual approval. All family loans are frozen pending repayment plans. All personal expenses will be reimbursed by the individuals who incurred them. You can't do this, Dad whispered. Mr. Harlan slid a legal opinion across. Actually, she can. The incorporation documents give her authority to protect company assets. If you'd like to challenge this, we can take it to court. But I should warn you, these transactions will be reviewed by a judge, and possibly the IRS. Emily stood up, chair screeching. You're ruining our lives because you're bitter about a wedding. That's pathetic, Laura. Pathetic. I met her eyes. No, Emily. I'm stopping the bleeding before this company collapses. If that ruins your life, maybe your life was built on money that wasn't yours to begin with. She stormed out. Mom followed, shooting me a look of hurt confusion. Dad stayed, gripping the table edge, knuckles white. Why are you doing this? He asked, and for a moment he sounded old, broken. I thought about lying, about explaining this was just business, just protecting assets, but the truth spilled out instead. You gave Emily $20,000 to start her marriage. You gave me a card that said, "Good luck." You thought I'd figure it out because I always do. Well, I figured it out, Dad. I figured out exactly how disposable you made me feel. I stood up, gathered my folders. Board meeting adjourned. You'll receive official documentation within the week. Walking out of that conference room felt like shedding skin. Something heavy and old sloughed off, leaving me raw but lighter. In the parking lot, Tom was waiting in our car. He'd taken a personal day to be nearby, just in case. I slid into the passenger seat and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. How'd it go? He asked. Phase 1 complete. I looked at the building, at the business Grandpa had built with his hands, that I'd rebuilt with my mind. They know now. They finally know. That night, I redirected company profits into a new account, marked for capital reinvestment and emergency reserves. Legally sound, ethically justified, but for my parents, who'd been drawing regular bonuses to cover their inflated lifestyle, it was a drought. The bills would start piling up now. The mortgage, the credit cards, the loans, all the things they'd funded with money that wasn't really theirs. And I would watch, patient and calm, as the consequences they'd built finally came home to roost. If they only knew this was just the beginning. January arrived with the IRS letter. I wasn't supposed to see it. It was addressed to Dad at the office, but I was the one who opened mail now. Part of my new protective oversight of company operations. The envelope was official, imposing, marked with the Treasury Department seal. Inside, a notice of audit for Thompson Builds, focusing on personal use of business assets and potential unreported income through corporate gifts. Someone had filed a report. Someone had flagged the irregularities. That someone was me, technically. Mr. Harlan had submitted an anonymous tip through proper channels 6 weeks ago, but Dad didn't need to know that. I walked into his office, the one that used to feel like a throne room, now just looked tired, and set the letter on his desk. This came today. His hands trembled as he read it. The color drained from his face, leaving him gray. An audit. They're auditing us. These things happen, I said, keeping my voice neutral, especially when there are questions about financial practices. This is you. He looked up, eyes wide with realization. You did this. You reported us. I protected the company, I corrected. There's a difference. If the IRS finds irregularities, that's because irregularities exist, not because I made them up. Laura, please. His voice broke. They're going to find the transfers, the wedding expenses, everything. Yes, I said simply. They probably will. What do we do? You cooperate. You hire a tax attorney. You probably pay back taxes on all those gifts Emily received. Corporate funds used for personal expenses are taxable income. I calculated quickly in my head. Roughly $200,000 over 5 years. At her tax bracket, maybe $60,000 to $80,000 in back taxes, plus penalties. He buried his face in his hands. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just the cold certainty that this was necessary. I'll help however I can. I lied. But I can't make this disappear. You'll need to talk to your accountant, and probably Mom and Emily. 2 weeks later, IRS agents arrived, 2 men in dark suits carrying briefcases full of questions. They set up in the conference room, requested 5 years of records. I provided everything meticulously organized, cross-referenced, documented. They worked for 3 days. Dad aged a year with each one. On the 3rd day, one of the agents approached me privately. "Ms. Thompson, you've been very helpful. Your record-keeping is exceptional." "I believe in transparency," I said. "We've noticed some concerning patterns regarding Ms. Emily Thompson's compensation and benefits. You're listed as vice president. Were you aware of these transactions?" "Not until recently. When I discovered them, I initiated internal review processes." "Smart." He nodded approvingly. "That shows proper corporate governance, protects you from any allegations of complicity." "Protects me." Because I'd made sure every document trail led to Dad's decisions, not mine. Every approval signature was his. Every transfer authorization bore his name. I'd built the gallows he was about to stand on, and built it entirely from his own choices. While the audit ground on, I launched Laura Builds LLC, registered, licensed, insured, completely above board. I've been planning it for months, laying groundwork while maintaining my VP role at Thompson Builds. My pitch was simple: eco-friendly construction, sustainable materials, modern design. Everything Thompson Builds had been moving toward under my leadership, but now independent, clean, untainted by family drama. I reached out to clients I'd developed relationships with over the years, developers who'd worked with me, who knew my competence. I was careful, ethical, never poached anyone while still employed at Thompson Builds. But once the audit started, once Dad's reputation cratered, they called me. "Laura, we heard about the IRS situation. We don't want to get tangled up in that." "I understand completely," I'd say. "Actually, I've started my own firm. Same quality, same principles, none of the complications." 1 client became 3. 3 became 7. By March, Laura Builds had secured 4 major contracts worth $800,000 combined. Thompson Builds, meanwhile, hemorrhaged. Clients left. Contractors stopped accepting bids. The reputation Grandpa had built, that I'd rebuilt, crumbled under the weight of scandal. Dad called me constantly. "You're stealing my clients." "I'm building my own business," I corrected. "If your clients choose to work with me instead, that's their decision." "After everything I gave you..." "You gave me a job," I interrupted. "I earned everything else, including the right to start my own company." Emily's situation collapsed even faster. Mark filed for divorce in February, citing irreconcilable differences. But the real kicker came during discovery when he submitted evidence of Emily's financial demands, including every email, text, and ultimatum she'd sent. I didn't have to do anything. Just forwarded Mark's lawyer the documentation he'd given me months ago. Corroborating evidence. Independent verification that Emily's spending wasn't Mark's exaggeration. It was her pattern. The divorce hearing was brutal, according to the court transcripts I legally obtained. Mark's attorney painted Emily as financially reckless, entitled, "Dependent on parental funding that had suddenly evaporated." Emily's attorney tried to argue she was accustomed to a certain lifestyle, deserved alimony to maintain it. The judge disagreed. Ms. Thompson is 28 years old, healthy, and capable of employment. The court finds no justification for spousal support beyond 6 months to allow for adjustment. Emily got nothing. No house. It was in Mark's name. No savings. They'd spent everything. No alimony beyond a pittance. The woman who'd floated through life on other people's money suddenly had to exist on her own merits. She called me, sobbing. "Laura, I have nowhere to go. Mark changed the locks. Mom and Dad can't afford to help right now. Can I stay with you and Tom? I was standing in my kitchen, preparing dinner. Tom looked at me, leaving the decision to me entirely. No, I said quietly. What? But I'm your sister. You're the person who said my wedding was cute but lacked wow factor, who accepted $120,000 from our parents while I got a card, who drew a salary for doing nothing while I built a business. No, Emily, you can't stay with me. Where am I supposed to go? Figure it out, I said, echoing Mom's words. You're the resourceful one. I hung up. She moved back in with Mom and Dad 2 days later. Their house, the one with the second mortgage, the one used as collateral, the one I'd stopped covering property taxes for, suddenly had 3 adults living on dwindling resources. Thanksgiving year 2 arrived like a storm. I'd been invited, Mom had called, voice tight with forced cheerfulness. It's family tradition, Laura. We'd love to see you. I almost declined. Tom suggested we start our own tradition, just us and friends. But something pulled me there. Maybe curiosity, maybe the need to see firsthand what my patience had wrought. The house felt different immediately. The decorations were sparse, no elaborate autumn arrangements, no expensive tablecloth. The smell of turkey filled the air, but something was off about it. Cheaper cut, maybe. Budget brand. Emily sat on the couch, scrolling her phone with dead eyes. No designer sweater this year, just jeans and a Target clearance top. She'd gained weight, stress eating probably, and her hair needed coloring, the roots showing dark against bleached blonde. Dad didn't meet my eyes when I arrived. Mom hugged me with desperation, holding on too long. Dinner was quiet until Emily cracked. "This is all your fault," she hissed across the turkey, eyes blazing. "You're ruining our lives. The IRS, the business failing, my divorce, all you. Because you couldn't handle me having a nice wedding." I set down my fork carefully. "Your choices ruined your life, Emily. You spent money that wasn't yours. You treated the business like a piggy bank. You threatened divorce when your husband wouldn't fund your landscaping. I didn't make you do any of that. You turned Mark against me. Mark turned against you when you became a financial black hole. I just provided evidence of what you'd already done." Dad slammed his fist on the table. Bang! Dishes jumped, gravy sloshing. "Ungrateful. After everything we sacrificed for you." Sacrificed. I stood up, the fury I'd been controlling finally leaking through. "You gave Emily everything and me nothing. You remortgaged your house for her wedding. You funneled company funds into her lifestyle. You gave me a card that said good luck and told me I'd figure it out. Well, I did figure it out, Dad. I figured out exactly what you value, and it was never me." Mom started crying. "We love you both equally." Equally. I pulled out my phone, opened a document. Emily received $197,000 in direct financial support over 5 years. I received $0. That's your equal love. The silence was deafening. "Good luck," I said, echoing those words that had started everything. I grabbed Tom's hand and walked out, leaving my plate half full and their excuses unspoken. In the car, Tom squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "I'm done," I said. "Done playing nice. Done pretending. Done caring if they understand." "What's next?" I looked at our modest but paid-off house in the distance, the life we'd built without handouts or favoritism. Next is watching their house of cards finally collapse. And it was collapsing. The bank appraisal came back in early December. The house value had dropped due to deferred maintenance. The roof needed replacing. The HVAC system was failing. The property taxes I'd been paying through my deferred bonuses were 2 years overdue, accumulating penalties. The bank called the loan, demanded immediate payment of $180,000 or foreclosure proceedings would begin. Dad called me at midnight, drunk. "Please, Laura, please, we'll lose everything." "Then you understand how I felt with that card," I said. "Good luck, Dad." I hung up and blocked his number. The cracks had become chasms, and the final fall was just beginning. The offer for my 40% stake came from Harrison Development, a competitor I'd worked with on sustainable housing projects. They'd watched Thompson Builds implode and saw opportunity. More specifically, they saw me. "We want the business," Marcus Harrison said over lunch in January. "But more importantly, we want you, your vision, your client relationships, your expertise. We'd restructure the company, keep the Thompson name for legacy purposes, but you'd lead operations." What about my father? Marcus didn't blink. He'd be offered a consulting role, minimal authority. Frankly, after the IRS investigation, his reputation is a liability. We'd be doing him a favor keeping him involved at all. The number they offered for my stake was $500,000, fair market value, vetted by 3 independent appraisers, clean, legal, devastating. I thought about it for exactly 3 days, ran scenarios with Mr. Harlan, discussed implications with Tom, sat with the decision the way you sit with something heavy you're about to let drop. On the 4th day, I signed the papers. The restructuring happened fast. Corporate acquisitions always do when everyone's motivated. Harrison Development became majority owner. I retained a consultancy position at $150,000 annually, plus project bonuses, and the business model shifted entirely to sustainable building. Dad was offered the consulting role. $30,000 a year, no benefits, no authority. He could advise on legacy projects, attend quarterly meetings, keep his name loosely attached to the business his father had built. He refused. Pride, probably, or shame. The call came through his lawyer, not directly to me. "Mr. Thompson declines the offer. He's pursuing other opportunities." Other opportunities. At 62, with a scandal trailing him and no connections left, what opportunities existed? The phone call I'd been waiting for came 3 days after the sale finalized. Dad's number, the one I'd unblocked for legal necessity. His voice was hollow, scraped raw. "Why, Laura? Just tell me why." I was in my home office looking at the card I'd kept in my desk drawer. "Good luck," in Mom's handwriting, a talisman of dismissal. "You taught me self-reliance, Dad. You taught me to figure things out on my own. I'm just applying the lessons." I paused. "And honestly, you did this to yourself. Every transfer, every loan, every time you chose Emily over fairness. I just stopped enabling it." "We'll lose the house." "Yes, you probably will. We're your family." "Family means equity," I said, my voice steady. "Family means supporting each other. Not just the golden child. You had 40 years to understand that. I'm not teaching you anymore." Click. I set the phone down and cried, not from regret, from release. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated as the capable one who didn't need love because she had competence. All of it flooding out, leaving me empty but clean. Tom found me there, held me while I sobbed. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's over now, you can rest." But it wasn't quite over. The begging intensified through February like a crescendo of desperation. Mom showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning, eyes swollen from crying, hands twisting her purse strap. "Please, honey, we need help. The foreclosure notice came. We have 60 days. I stood in my doorway, not inviting her in. "Mom, I've offered help. I offered Dad a consulting position. He refused." That was humiliating for him, a fraction of what he was making. "A fraction more than I received from you," I interrupted. "I started with nothing, Mom, a card that said, 'Good luck.' Dad can start there too." That was different. "How? Explain how it's different." She couldn't, just stood there, tears streaming, trying to find words that didn't exist. "I love you," she finally said. "You're my daughter. Please don't do this." "I love you too," I replied, and meant it. But love isn't enabling destruction. Emily destroyed her marriage with greed. You and Dad destroyed the business with favoritism. I'm not destroying myself to save you from consequences. I closed the door gently, watched through the window as she walked to her car, an older model now, the Lexus repossessed months ago, and drove away. Dad's voicemails piled up. I listened to each one, documenting them with the same thoroughness I'd documented everything else. "Laura, please call me. We can work something out." "You can't just abandon your family. That's not how we raised you." "Fine. Be cold, be cruel. But you'll regret this." I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about the card, about Emily, about everything. Please. The evolution from anger to bargaining to desperation was textbook. I felt nothing listening to them. The wound he'd spent decades creating couldn't be healed by apologies made under duress. Emily tried a different tactic. She showed up at Tom's school in March, cornering him after his last class. He called me from the parking lot, voice tense. "She's asking me to convince you to help, crying, making a scene." I told her no, but Laura, she's desperate. I know. Let her be desperate. Desperation leads to change or collapse, and either way, it's not my responsibility anymore. You're sure? Because if you want to help them, I don't, I said firmly. I want them to feel what I felt, alone, unsupported, told to figure it out. That's the only language they'll understand. In April, Mark's divorce proceedings concluded. His testimony, presented in a deposition I obtained legally through public records, was damning. Emily Thompson expected continuous financial support from both her parents and myself. She made demands for luxury items, jewelry, vacations, home renovations, and threatened divorce when I expressed concern about our budget. Text messages show a pattern of entitlement, including a message stating, "My parents spent $100K on our wedding. The least you can do is maintain their standards." The judge's ruling awarded Mark the house, the cars, and freedom from alimony after the initial 6-month period. Emily was ordered to seek employment within 90 days or face contempt charges. Employment. The woman who'd never worked a real job in her life, whose resume listed creative consultant for a company that had just been sold out from under her father. Her job applications went nowhere. I knew because mutual acquaintances mentioned it. Emily had applied to retail stores, restaurants, offices, getting rejected at every turn. No references, no experience, a reputation for entitlement that somehow preceded her. She ended up at a call center, taking customer service complaints for $15 an hour. The fall from princess to peasant was complete. May brought the eviction notice. Foreclosure proceedings had concluded. The house sold at auction to a young couple from New York who wanted the schools and the yard for their kids. 60 days to vacate. They came to my door together. Mom, Dad, Emily, a united front of desperation. Tom answered, told them I'd speak to them on the porch. He stayed visible through the window, my protector. Mom was sobbing before she even spoke. Dad looked diminished, aged beyond his 62 years. Emily just looked furious, arms crossed defensively. "Please, Laura," Mom begged. "We're family. We're going to be homeless. There are shelters, but—" "Shelters?" Dad interrupted, voice cracking. "We built that house. Your grandfather and I. Every room has memories. And now strangers are taking it because you, I said calmly, cutting him off. Used it as collateral for business loans, because you remortgaged it for Emily's wedding, because when the property taxes went unpaid, taxes I used to cover, you didn't notice until it was too late. I didn't take your house, Dad. You gambled it away, and you lost." "Where are we supposed to go?" Emily demanded. I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer clothes gone, replaced by thrift store finds. The perfect nails now chipped and short. The entitled sneer buried under genuine fear. "Figure it out," I said quietly. "You're resourceful. You'll manage." "You're heartless," Emily spat. "A cold, heartless bitch who couldn't stand to see me happy." "No," I corrected. "I'm just fair. You got $120,000 for your wedding. I got a card. You got years of financial support. I got told to budget better. You got every advantage. And you squandered it. That's not my heartlessness. That's your consequences." I pulled out a folder I'd been keeping just for this moment. "Since you're here, let me show you something." I opened it on the porch railing, spreading documents like a final exhibit. Grandpa's will, showing my 40% ownership. Bank statements showing every transfer to Emily. Emails where Dad approved personal expenses as business costs. IRS findings showing $78,000 in back taxes owed on unreported income. Emily's gifts. The foreclosure notice showing 2 years of unpaid property taxes. Mark's divorce filing showing Emily's financial demands. Every piece of evidence that proves you built this disaster yourselves. Dad stared at the papers. We didn't know. You did know, I said. You knew Emily was spoiled. You knew the money came from somewhere. You knew I was covering for you. You just didn't care because it was easier to let me handle it while you indulged her. What do you want from us? Mom whispered. Nothing, I said honestly. I wanted acknowledgement, apology, fairness. But it's too late for that now. Now I just want you to understand that actions have consequences. That family means treating everyone with equity, not just favorites. That good luck isn't enough when someone needs actual support. Emily lunged forward like she might hit me. Tom stepped out immediately, his teacher's authority making her freeze. You need to leave now, he said firmly. They left. Mom stumbling, Dad supporting her, Emily shooting me a look of pure hatred. I watched them pile into their old sedan, the one with the dented fender and expired inspection sticker, and drive away. Tom put his arm around me. You okay? I will be, I said, and I meant it. 2 weeks later, I heard through Aunt Rita that they'd moved into Emily's tiny one-bedroom apartment, all 3 of them, sharing a space meant for one. Mom slept on the couch. Dad took the floor. Emily kept her bedroom but had to endure their constant presence. The life they'd built on borrowed money and broken promises had collapsed entirely. And the daughter they'd overlooked had been the one to pull every strategic stone from the foundation until nothing remained but rubble. I kept the card in my desk, a reminder, not of pain, but of transformation, of the moment I stopped waiting for them to see my worth and started building my own empire instead. Good luck, it said. I'd made my own luck, and it was better than anything they'd ever offered me. The auction was scheduled for a Thursday in late September, exactly 1 year after Emily's wedding. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same crisp autumn air, the same scent of turning leaves, the same sense of inevitability. I arrived early, parking across the street from the house I'd grown up in. The colonial facade looked tired now, paint peeling near the gutters. The garden overgrown with weeds Mom no longer had energy to pull. A small crowd had gathered on the lawn, investors mostly, flipping through property specs on tablets, discussing renovation costs and resale values. The auctioneer sat up on the front steps, his podium looking absurdly official against the backdrop of my childhood home. I remembered playing on those steps, Grandpa teaching me to hammer nails into scrap wood right there on the porch. Now strangers would own those memories. Mom and Dad stood on the sidewalk across the street, 3 suitcases and 2 boxes containing what remained of their life. Dad's face was stone, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Mom clutched a tissue, dabbing at eyes that never seemed to stop leaking lately. Emily wasn't there, working her shift at the call center, unable to afford taking time off. I stayed in my car, watching through the windshield. Not hiding exactly, just observing from a distance, the way you watch something inevitable and final. The bidding started at $150,000, well below the original value. Foreclosure properties always went cheap, damaged goods, tainted by desperation. An investor in a business suit raised his paddle, then another. The price climbed slowly, $160,000, $175,000, $190,000. A young couple, 30s maybe, holding hands nervously, bid $200,000. They looked at each other with excitement, probably imagining their kids playing in that yard, hosting Thanksgivings in that dining room, clean slate, fresh start, everything my family had squandered. $200,000 going once, the auctioneer called. Dad turned away, shoulders shaking. Going twice. Mom covered her face. Sold to bidder number 47 for $200,000. The gavel came down with a crack that seemed to split the air. Final, irrevocable. The house that 3 generations of Thompsons had built, lived in, loved in, gone to strangers for a fraction of its worth. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, watching the couple sign papers with the auctioneer. watching my parents load suitcases into their dented sedan, watching the crowd disperse like witnesses leaving a funeral. When Dad's car pulled away, I finally exhaled. It was done. The court proceedings came 2 weeks later. Mr. Harlan had negotiated Dad's surrender carefully, plead guilty to misdemeanors, avoid felony charges that would have meant prison time, financial mismanagement, improper use of corporate funds, failure to maintain fiduciary duty. The evidence was overwhelming, meticulously documented in the folders I'd spent a year compiling. I sat in the back of the courtroom, Tom beside me, as Mr. Harlan presented the case. Each transaction displayed on a screen, dates, amounts, purposes claimed versus actual use. The $50,000 house down payment, the $120,000 wedding expenses, the years of salary paid to Emily for work never performed. Your Honor, Mr. Harlan stated, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. This represents a clear pattern of misuse of corporate funds for personal benefit. The defendant systematically diverted nearly $200,000 from Thompson Builds to support his daughter's lifestyle, disguising personal expenses as business costs to avoid taxes and accountability. Dad's lawyer tried to argue mitigating circumstances, family business confusion, blurred lines between personal and corporate, no intent to defraud. The judge wasn't swayed. Judge Martinez was a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back severely, reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd reviewed every document, listened to every argument. When she spoke, her voice was disappointed rather than angry. Somehow that made it worse. Mr. Thompson, you had a responsibility to your business, your employees, and your co-owner. You violated that trust repeatedly and systematically. The fact that the co-owner is your daughter doesn't excuse it. It makes it more egregious. You taught her that hard work means nothing when favoritism is in play. Dad stood at the defendant's table, head bowed. I'm ordering restitution of $100,000 to be paid to Thompson Build's successor company, representing the most egregious misappropriations. Additionally, you're fined $25,000 payable to the state and sentenced to 3 years probation. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Dad whispered. $100,000, the exact amount he'd spent on Emily's wedding. The symmetry was perfect, almost poetic. The IRS settlement came separately, $78,000 in back taxes for Emily's unreported income, plus $15,000 in penalties. Emily had no way to pay it, so the IRS set up a payment plan that would take 15 years to complete. 15 years of garnished wages from her call center job, constant reminder of what she'd taken and never earned. Her consultant position was officially terminated in the court ruling. Not that it mattered, the job hadn't existed for months. But having it stated in legal documents entered into public record meant anyone searching her background would find it. The entitled princess officially dethroned. The social fallout rippled through Greenwich's business community like a stone dropped in still water. The Connecticut Business Journal ran a piece. Thompson Builds founder guilty in family embezzlement scheme. Local contractors associations sent warning emails about financial mismanagement. The country club where my parents had been members for 30 years quietly declined to renew their membership. Friends vanished. The couples who'd attended Emily's lavish wedding, who'd toasted the perfect union and admired the 5-tier cake, gone. Phone calls went unreturned. Invitations stopped coming. The Thompsons became a cautionary tale whispered over expensive lunches. Did you hear about Jim Thompson? Let his daughter bleed the company dry. Lost everything. Emily's former social circle, the other trust fund princesses who'd brunched and shopped and posted perfect Instagram lives, dropped her completely. When you can't afford to keep up appearances, appearances don't keep you. She'd tried attending one of their gatherings in July, I heard through mutual acquaintances. They'd been polite but cold, checking watches, making excuses to leave early. She never went back. The worst part for them, I think, wasn't the financial loss. Money can be rebuilt, houses can be replaced. The worst part was the knowledge. public, documented, undeniable, that they'd done this to themselves, that the daughter they'd overlooked had the power all along to stop it, and chose instead to let them fall. I attended Dad's sentencing, but didn't approach them afterward, just watched from the back of the courtroom as they shuffled out, Dad's lawyer murmuring about appeal options they couldn't afford, Mom clutching his arm like she was afraid he'd disappear. In the parking lot, Tom asked, "Do you feel better, now that it's done?" I thought about it, watching leaves skitter across the pavement in the autumn wind. I don't feel better. I feel balanced. Like a scale that's been tilted my whole life just settled at 0. That's not happiness. No, I agreed, but it's justice, and sometimes that's enough. We drove home to the life we'd built, modest, honest, earned. Behind us, my family gathered their pieces and tried to figure out how to survive in the wreckage they'd created. The daughter they'd dismissed with good luck had given them exactly that: luck, consequences, and the cold clarity that comes from being forced to face truth. The gavel had fallen, the verdict was delivered, and the forgotten sister had finally, decisively, been heard. 6 months after the auction, Tom and I closed on our dream home. Not a mansion, we didn't need excess to prove worth, but a beautiful craftsman-style house in Fairfield with a wraparound porch, mature oak trees in the yard, and enough space to imagine children's laughter echoing through the halls someday. I'd invested the $500,000 from selling my stake carefully. Half went into the house, paid in full, no mortgage. The rest I split between retirement accounts and capital for Laura Builds, which was thriving beyond my most optimistic projections. We'd secured 15 major contracts in the first year alone. Sustainable housing developments, eco-friendly renovations, green building projects that combine my passion for construction with environmental responsibility. Revenue hit $2.3 million in year 1. Profit margins held steady at 20%. I hired 12 employees, paid them fair wages with full benefits, built the kind of company Grandpa would have been proud of. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was also consulting for the restructured Thompson Builds under Harrison Development. They'd kept the name for legacy purposes and kept me for expertise. I worked 10 hours a month advising on projects, got paid $12,500 quarterly, and felt no conflict about it. This was the company I'd saved, rebuilt, and finally escaped from. Now I could contribute on my own terms, fairly compensated, completely in control. I was no longer the overlooked daughter, the strong one who had to figure everything out alone. I'd become the woman who demanded respect and received it, who built success without handouts or favoritism, who proved that merit, patience, and strategy could defeat entitlement. The transformation was internal as much as external. I stopped checking my phone anxiously, waiting for the next family crisis call, stopped feeling guilty for setting boundaries, stopped carrying the weight of their poor choices. I'd spent 30 years being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who held everything together while receiving nothing in return. Now I was just Laura, successful, content, free. Tom and I talked about children one evening on our new porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. "If we have kids," he said carefully, knowing this topic still carried weight, "how do we make sure we don't—" "Repeat the pattern?" I finished. "We treat them equally, not identically. Kids have different needs, but equitably. We invest in their individual strengths without creating favorites. We make them feel valued for who they are, not just what they do. What if one struggles more than the other? Then that one gets more support, but not at the expense of the other. Love isn't a finite resource. Attention isn't a zero-sum game. We can lift both boats without sinking one." I took his hand. "We break the cycle. That's how." He kissed my forehead. "You're going to be an amazing mom." "We're going to be amazing parents," I corrected. "Together. Equally." Aunt Rita came to our housewarming in October, bringing homemade apple pie and validation I didn't know I still needed. She raised a glass of wine in the living room filled with friends, real friends, not obligatory family, and made a toast. "To Laura," she said, her voice carrying the strength of someone who'd also been overlooked and survived, who proved that justice isn't vengeance, it's balance, who built something beautiful from nothing while others squandered everything handed to them, who showed us that patience, strategy, and self-respect can move mountains. "Your grandfather would be so damn proud," I cried then, letting tears fall freely, not from pain or regret, but from recognition. The little girl who'd learned blueprints in Grandpa's truck, who'd been told she was too practical to need pretty things, who'd worked twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. She'd won. Not by destroying others, but by building herself. That's the victory that matters. That's the transformation that lasts. So what's the lesson here? What's the universal truth buried in this messy, painful story of family favoritism and calculated consequences? Justice isn't revenge. Revenge is emotional, reactive, meant to hurt. Justice is measured, strategic, designed to restore balance. When I blocked those transfers, documented those transactions, let the natural consequences unfold, that wasn't about making them suffer. It was about stopping the bleeding and demanding accountability. Family should lift all boats, not just the golden one. My parents had resources, time, money, attention, love. They chose to pour everything into Emily while handing me scraps and calling it building character. That's not how families work. That's how favoritism destroys relationships, breeds resentment, and teaches terrible lessons to everyone involved. Dignity doesn't come from handouts. It comes from fairness. Emily got everything given to her and lost everything because she never learned to earn, to build, to sustain. I got nothing and built an empire because I had no choice but to learn those skills. Neither extreme is healthy. The answer is equity. Giving everyone what they need to succeed, then letting them prove their worth through effort. If you've faced this kind of favoritism, if you've been the forgotten sibling, the overlooked child, the one expected to just figure it out, I want you to know something crucial. Your worth isn't determined by their blindness. You're not less valuable because they couldn't see your value. Stand tall. Demand equity, not scraps. And if they won't give it, build your own life so undeniably successful they can't ignore it. What would you do in my shoes? Would you have helped them when they came begging? Would you have accepted the apology? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Let them face the consequences they'd built themselves. Comment below and tell me which city you're watching from. I love hearing from all of you. If you agree that favoritism destroys families, that actions have consequences, that the overlooked deserve justice, smash that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more stories where the underdog doesn't just survive, but thrives. I keep that card in my desk drawer still. Good luck, in Mom's handwriting. But it's not a reminder of pain anymore. It's a reminder of transformation. A reminder that I took their dismissal and turned it into power. Good luck? I made my own. And here's what I learned. Sometimes the quiet ones strike hardest. The patient ones win longest. The overlooked ones see everything. Until next time, remember this. Patience isn't weakness. Strategy isn't cruelty. And justice, when served cold and calculated, tastes exactly like freedom. Thanks for watching. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and I'll see you in the next story.